Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. Before this episode starts, again, a huge thank you to Eddie for all your help on this episode. And again, if you're watching this and you realize that I make a mistake, please make sure that you know that that is Eddie's fault, not mine. Just kidding, but seriously, anyways, let's move on. So about a year ago, I did an episode on commanders with one-card combos. There are a ton of powerful commanders out there, and some basically just say, you know what, why don't you just go grab that one card and things are gonna go pretty well for us. Now, since that episode came out, we've actually gotten quite a few more commanders that have some fantastic one-card combos. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about on this episode. I'm going to break down the commander and the card or cards that actually combo with them. And I'm sure I'm going to miss something here or there, so make sure you comment below and let me know what I missed. I might miss a card that they combo with, or I might even miss a commander that has a one-card combo from the past year. So with all that said, let's jump into it. First up, let's talk about Dina Soul Steeper, which combos with Exquisite Blood. Dina Soul Steeper is a new uncommon commander from Strixhaven. She has the very fantastic text, whenever you gain life, each opponent loses one life, which works very well, in fact, infinitely well with Exquisite Blood, which says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So all you have to do is either gain one life or an opponent has to lose one life, and then these just go back and forth. Since you gained one life, each opponent loses one life. Then because opponents lose life, you gain life. Then they lose life again, and you see where this is going. Now, Dina also has the text, pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Dina Soul Steeper gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X the sacrifice creature's power. So if you've got a creature like a pest in play that you can sacrifice to gain life, or if you've got some sort of a blood artist type effect in play, you can just activate that, and it can get going from there. Other than that, literally anything that makes your opponents lose life or you gain life will work. So yeah, Dina is a pretty fantastic combo commander, especially since you're in black and you've got access to a lot of the most powerful tutors out there. And actually another commander, yet this one is from last year in M21, also commanders with Exquisite Blood, and that would be Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. Vito says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So of course this works in a very similar way, but slightly different, and yet it does not matter because it is infinite. On top of that, you can pay 3 black, and creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. So essentially you just pay that mana, you swing with any creature, and when it does any kind of damage, you're gonna gain life, and then the party begins. You gain life, so an opponent loses life, and then you gain life because of that, and then they lose life, and you know what I mean. So yeah, there's a reason that Exquisite Blood is currently a $40 card. But next up, let's move on to another expensive card in our next combo with Brutak. Brutak is a commander from Jumpstart, and it combos with a few things, but first off, let's talk about Maddening Cacophony. Brutak says if an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. And then Maddening Cacophony has Kicker for 3 and a blue, and it says each opponent mills 8 cards. If this spell was kicked, instead each opponent mills half their library, rounded up. So yeah, you're gonna want to kick this spell. Each opponent milling 16 cards for 2 mana is lovely, but each opponent milling their entire library for 6 mana, that's game ending. So yeah, that is definitely a 2-card combo that can take out all of your opponents. Or at least I should say all of your opponents that don't have a Shuffle Titan in their library for whatever reason. Regardless, the other cards that combo with Brutak aren't quite as effective, yet still very effective, so let's talk about Traumatize. Traumatize says target player puts the top half of their library rounded down into their graveyard. So again, rounding down isn't as good as rounding up, so it's not perfect, and also you're only going to be taking out one player. Still, pretty much milling one player out is a very fantastic thing to do. And then one more card that comes with Brutak is Fleet Swallower. It has when it attacks, target player puts the top half of their library rounded up into their graveyard. The actual funny thing about this that I pretty much always forget is that this doesn't have to attack the player that you're milling. So you can attack someone that this can survive against, and then you just mill someone else out, and yeah, goodbye library. Regardless, with Brutak, you've got some options to mill your opponents very quickly. Next up, let's move on to Emile the Blast and Workhorse. It's kind of funny actually, because this is a commander that is a unicorn and it works with a horse, or I guess an artifact horse, or whatever this thing is. Anyways, Emile has pay 3, exile another target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. And then Workhorse is going to enter the battlefield with 4++1 counters on it, and you can remove a counter from it to add colorless. So with each of these in play, you move 3 of those counters from Workhorse and you make 3 colorless mana. You use that to activate Emile to blink Workhorse and it comes right back. You can of course do this as many times as you would like. Now unfortunately you can't just remove that last counter because Workhorse, well, would die. But if you've got some sort of an Anthem effect or another way to get another counter on Workhorse when it comes into play, that will work. And yes, unfortunately, Emile's ++1 counter trigger does cost mana. But still, there are plenty of ways to win with infinite ETBs. But actually, one combo that does work with Emile actually works when Emile is not the commander. Let me explain by introducing you to Rasputin Dreamweaver. Rasputin is a very expensive old card on the reserve list, and it's got a lot of text, so here we go. Its Oracle text reads, it enters the battlefield with 7 dream counters on it, and you can remove a dream counter from it to add colorless. So essentially, same thing with Workhorse, but with this you can make infinite colorless mana. With that mana, you can blink something else, maybe something else that's got an ETB that you can win with, etc, etc. And actually, before I move on, I just want to mention that this same combo with Rasputin actually works with Eldrazi Displacer as well. Eldrazi Displacer has pay 2 and a colorless, exile another target creature, then return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So Rasputin does come back in the exact same way, though tapped, but for the same price. Regardless, let's move on to the next one-card commander combo with Elena Kessig Trapper / Staff of Domination. Okay, bear with me, technically, yes, this is a 3-card combo, but this is a partner commander, so you can utilize another partner commander and it works with that. So I'm counting it. And actually, I'm pretty sure that I've got other partner commanders in this episode as well, and those count too, okay? Regardless, let's get into this one. Elena has tap, add amount of red equal to the greatest power among creatures you control that enter the battlefield this turn. And then Staff of Domination does a lot of things, so here we go. Pay 1, untap Staff of Domination. Pay 2 and tap it, you gain 1 life. Pay 3 and tap it, untap target creature. Pay 4 and tap it, tap target creature. Pay 5 and tap it, draw a card. You catch all that? Good. Basically, the most important ones out of all these, though, are the first one and the third one. So what we need is a creature to come and play that's got at least 5 power. So then Elena can tap to add 5 red to our mana pool. We use 3 of that mana to tap Staff of Domination to untap Elena. We use 1 of the remaining 2 mana to untap Staff of Domination itself. So we've got 1 extra mana just left over. Then we do this as many times as we want. So we've got infinite red mana, and then we can utilize Staff of Domination to its fullest. Most notably, we use it to draw our entire deck. And gain infinite life, though we probably don't need infinite life if we've got infinite mana in our entire deck. Regardless, some partner commanders to consider are ones that again have at least 5 power, like Elegith, Akroma, and Kamal. Though obviously, this combo works if you're using more than one other card, because you can just have any creature that's got 5 or more power. Also, keep in mind that Elena combos with other cards like Umbral Mantle. It says equipped creature has pay 3 and untap it, this creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So if you can tap Elena for 3 mana, she become infinitely large, and if you can tap her for 4, well, you've got infinite mana as well. And the other one that I want to highlight is Sword of the Parents. It says a lot of things, but the most important one is pay 3 to tap or untap equipped creature. So again, if she can tap for 4, congratulations, you've got infinite mana. And speaking of infinite mana, there's Kennen Bonder Prodigy. A broken Simic commander, who knew? Anyways, Kennen says whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. So this broken commander combos with the broken card, Basalt Monolith. It doesn't untap during your untap step, and you can tap it for 3, and it has pay 3 untap it. So with Kennen in play, your Basalt Monolith now taps for 4. So you tap it for 4 mana, you use 3 of that to untap it, you tap it for 4 more, and you see where this is going. And if you've got some green and blue mana lying around, Kennen even gives you a nice little place to dump that mana into. By paying 5 green blue, you look at the top 5 cards of your library, you may put a non-human creature card from among them onto the battlefield, and you rest them on your library in a random order. So yeah, there are plenty of ways to win from there. But Kennen isn't the only new commander, and in fact not even the only new Ikoria commander that this can combo with. Because Basalt Monolith also combos with Zerda the Dawnwaker. Zerda says, abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. So Basalt Monolith still only taps for 3, but it only costs 1 to untap it. So you tap it for 3, you untap it for 1, you tap it for 3 more, and you see where this is going again. Who knew that Basalt Monolith was so broken? But we're not quite done with infinite mana shenanigans yet, so let's talk about Gigantha the Wellspring. Gigantha has tap, add Wooburg. This mana can't be spent to pay generic mana cost. And then Penman's Aura does a lot of things, but the most important one is pay a blue to untap enchanted creature. So you tap it for Wooburg, you use the blue to untap it. You tap it for Wooburg, you use the blue to untap it. And so on and so forth, and now you've got infinite mana of every single color except for blue. Though, keep in mind that you can only use this mana on non-generic mana costs. Still, there are plenty of powerful things that you can do with that. And of course, since I talked about Penman's Aura, I've got to bring up Read from the Real. It's also an aura that has the very important text, pay a blue, untap enchanted creature. So again, either way, infinite non-blue mana, but you're restricted on what you can use it on. But now it's time for us to move on to Coma, Cosmos, Serpent, and World Slayer. Coma has this spell can't be countered at the beginning of each upkeep. Create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Coma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent, choose one. Tap target permanent, its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. Or Coma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn. And then World Slayer says, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer. So basically you hand this sword to the Cosmos Serpent and say, have fun. As long as you're getting damage through, this combo works fantastically. You sacrifice a serpent to give Coma indestructible until end of turn. So then everything goes bye-bye except for Coma and World Slayer. At the beginning of the next upkeep, you're getting another 3/3. And then on the upkeep after that, and that, and that. And even if your opponents try to rebuild, well, their efforts are going to be pretty futile. All you have to do is hit another opponent with Coma with World Slayer attached, and goodbye. And again, because you're going to have extra serpents to sacrifice, Coma's going to be fine. Notably, Coma isn't the only combo with World Slayer from the past year. You basically just need a creature that's indestructible or can regenerate. So Toski, yep, that works because Toski is indestructible. Guillaume Master Chef, sure, you just make a food token, then you sacrifice that food and Guillaume has indestructible. Even Sylvar can make this work though in kind of a sad way. All you have to do is have Sylvar eat Trin, your other commander, and then it's indestructible. So if you want to get kind of dark and morose, go for that. Regardless, there are still some combos out there that I'm going to talk about that are technically not perfect, but we're going to talk about them still. First up, let's talk about Brawlin Skyshark Rider, Shabraz the Skyshark, and Curiosity. Brawlin says, whenever you discard a card, put a ++1 counter on Brawlin Skyshark Rider and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. This combos with Curiosity, which says whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. Now, if you've got Shabraz in play, that's great, but basically I just put it here because, yes, they partner together, and because they do, you get access to blue. Now, technically, you can do this combo without a free discard outlet. If you go to your end step and you have to discard down to hand size, this is going to go infinite. Now, whether you win or lose because of that is dependent on some factors. Most notably, how many cards you have in your library and how much life each of your opponents have. Because when you're forced to discard a card, you're going to ping each opponent for 1. So you draw 3 cards, then you've got to discard 3 more. So you keep pinging each opponent and drawing cards. And then eventually, either their life totals are going to run out or your library will. So don't try this combo until you know that you can win. And of course, this combo also works with Brawlin and Ophidian as well, which is essentially the exact same thing as Curiosity, but it costs a little bit more, but it's got Flash. Regardless, again, please be careful when pulling this off. Next up, let's talk about Sengir the Dark Baron and Sanguine Bond. Sengir has the text, whenever their player loses the game, you gain life equal to that player's life total as the turn began. And then Sanguine Bond says, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So again, this combo is also dependent on some factors. Essentially, the perfect way that this combo works is that you take out the player that's got the most life. Or at least I should say, tied for the most life. Perhaps you kill an opponent with commander damage with Sengir. Let's say that player has 40 life and so do your other opponents just to make it easy. You take out that player, they lose the game, and you gain 40 life since they started off that turn with 40 life. Then Sanguine Bond triggers and you make target opponent lose 40 life. So someone else then loses the game and you gain 40 more life. Then you make that last opponent lose 40 life and that's game over because you've taken out all the players. So again, this is dependent on some factors, but it can be incredibly powerful. And keep in mind that there are other cards that have the exact same text as Sanguine Bond, like Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. And another one, though it's got a higher converted mana cost, but still very effective, is Defiant Bloodlord. Regardless, have fun draining out everyone in a big flashy way with the Dark Baron. Next up, let's talk about the combo of Kodama the East Tree partnered with Togo Goblin Weaponsmith, utilizing something like Rule Turf. Kodama says, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. And then Togo says, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Rock. Now, it's really not all that necessary to know what Rock does, so we're just going to skip it. Gruul Turf is the last piece of this combo, which says when it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. So essentially, the combo works like this. You play Gruul Turf as your land for the turn, and you're going to use its trigger to bounce it back to your hand. Togo's going to trigger, making you a Rock. Since Rock was put onto the battlefield under your control and it wasn't put onto the battlefield with Kodama's trigger, you can put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So Rock's mana cost is 0, and lucky for us, so is Gruul Turf. So we put Gruul Turf back onto the battlefield and we bounce it back to our hand, we get another Rock, we get it back into play, and you see where this is going. Essentially, we end up with infinite landfall triggers and infinite Rocks in play. Now, obviously, this doesn't just win you the game, but if you've got any other ETB landfall triggers or whenever an artifact comes into play, etc., you can win with that. And actually, in Commander Legends, we got yet another land combo piece for this with Guildless Commons. It's essentially the exact same thing as Gruul Turf, but it taps for colorless. Regardless, again, you're going to have infinite Rocks, but you need some way to win with them or with your landfall triggers. Next up, let's talk about the combo. Okay, technically, it's not just one other card, but still, I'm including it here, Cody and Living End. Cody says you can't cast permanent spells, so that's a lovely restriction. Regardless, it has pay 4 and tap it at Wooburg. When you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards to the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with lesser mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put each other card exiled this way in the bottom of your library in a random order. And then Living End has to spend 3, 4, 2 black, but we're not going to cast it in that way. Its Oracle text reads, each player exiles all creature cards from their graveyard, then sacrifices all creatures they control, then puts all cards they exile this way onto the battlefield. Essentially, switch the creatures in the graveyard with the ones in play. So Living End doesn't really have a mana cost, so its technical mana cost is 0. We can't cast it from our hand, but thanks to Cody, we can basically cast it out of our library. We activate Cody, we cast something that costs 1, and as long as we've got nothing else in our library that costs 0 to cast, congratulations, we're casting Living End. So I may or may not have built an entire deck around this, working on cycling creatures and getting them into my graveyard, and then getting them all out with Living End. So again, this combo won't just straight up win you the game, but it's quite fun. And then next up, in a somewhat similar way, there's Plarg, Dean of Chaos, and Restore Balance. Plarg has pay 4 and a red, tap it, reveal cards to the top of your library to reveal a non-legendary, non-land card with mana value 3 or less. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put all reveal cards not cast this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then Restore Balance has to spend 6 for a white, but again, we're not going to be doing that. It says each player chooses a number of lands they control equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Players sacrifice creatures and discard cards the same way. So in a similar way to that Cody Living End deck, as long as we build this deck properly, we can basically guarantee that we're always going to hit this. Now again, this doesn't win you the game, but if you've got the right setup, you can basically make it so that you're way ahead of everyone else. Now keep in mind that cards like Restore Balance aren't always the friendliest cards in Commander, and some players don't want to play with mass land destruction. But if your playgroup's completely fine with mass land destruction, go for it. And if you're looking for some more ideas for that deck, make sure you check out my episode called Is It Possible to Break Plarg? Anyways, next up there's Bergie, God of Storytelling, which combos with Grinning Ignis. Bergie says whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And then Grinning Ignis has pay a red, return it to its owner's hand, add 2 and a red to your mana pool, activates ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So this combo is actually pretty simple, though it's just an infinite loop of ETBs. You cast Grinning Ignis and Bergie gives you a red, and then you use that red to bounce Grinning Ignis back to your hand. When you do that, Grinning Ignis basically gives you the mana that you need to cast it back. So you cast it again, you get another mana for Bergie, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously you aren't generating infinite mana, but you do get infinite ETB triggers. So if you've got something like Impact Tremors or Alter the Brood in play, that's game over for your opponents. Impact Tremors would be infinite damage, and Alter the Brood will be milling them infinitely. And of course, if you've got a Storm card like Grapeshot, you can just win with that as well. Grapeshot's gonna deal 1 damage to our creature or player, and it's got Storm. So with this, you can just dish out, I don't know, 1 trillion damage to everyone, whatever number you want. Next up, another technical 2-card combo. Okay, this one's really pushing it, but I wanted to include it here. Elena, Apex of Wishes, and Omniscience. Elena, Apex of Wishes has whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. Put that card onto the battlefield or into your hand. And then Omniscience says you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Basically, you need a way to create a creature token, in fact, a non-human creature token. Because your entire deck is going to have absolutely no creatures, and in fact, no other permanents, or I should say non-land permanents other than Omniscience. And then with your deck built correctly with Omniscience in play, you're basically going to be able to loop your entire deck over and over again. I actually already made an episode for this combo, and there's a reason that I made the thumbnail look like this. And yes, I know, it's not a perfect combo, but come on, it's a lot of fun. I guess it's a lot of fun if you're the one playing it. Again, please ask other players if they're okay with you playing with these types of decks before actually doing it. Next up, let's talk about Dargo the Shipwrecker and Phyrexian Altar, which is another technical combo, but again, I'm going to include it here because it's funny. It says, as your cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of artifacts and or creatures. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this way, and 2 less to cast for each other artifact or creature you sacrifice this turn. And then Phyrexian Altar says, sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color. Basically, the combo works like this. The first time that you cast Dargo, you need to sacrifice enough things to get its mana cost just down to red. So you can cast Dargo for just a red, then you sacrifice it with Phyrexian Altar. So then Dargo actually counts all the things you've already sacrificed, including itself, when you do it again. So its commander tax might be 2 more, but since you sacrifice Dargo, it's going to cost 2 less. And because you sacrifice it with Phyrexian Altar, you add a red to your mana pool, and you can just keep casting Dargo an infinite number of times. Now, obviously, this one does require setup, and that's not actually just a way to win. You need something else, another kind of payoff to actually win. So whether that's things like I mentioned before, like Impact Tremors or Alter the Brood, whatever you need, it works. Next up, let's talk about Moira the Frost and Airy Oofs, which is a really hard name to say. And I'm sure I didn't say it right. Anyways, Moira the Frost, let's talk about that first. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and snow in addition to its other types, and if it's a creature, it enters with 2 additional +1 counters on it and has Changeling. And then Airy Oofs has Sacrifice It. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature with flying, and it's got Persist. Basically, you have Moira become a copy of Airy Oofs when it comes into play. You then sacrifice Moira to ping a flyer, and then because of Persist, it comes back into play. It comes back into play with a -1/-1 counter on it, but you make it become a copy of Airy Oofs again, and because it's a creature, you get 2 +1/-1 counters. So essentially, at the end of that, you're back into play with 1 +1/-1 counter and no -1/-1 counters. So you can essentially do this as many times as you need to. Now, obviously this works with any Persist creature, but obviously it's a lot more impactful when you've got something like an Altar of Dementia or something like that in play. Basically an infinite sacrifice outlet that can help you win the game. The final one though is actually not a new commander that combos, but a new card that comes with a commander, so I thought I'd still include it. And thank you again, Eddie, for reminding me about this one. So this combo revolves around Opposition Agent and Marilyn of the Mornsong. Opposition Agent says you control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though mana of any color to cast them. And then Marilyn of the Mornsong says players can't draw cards. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player loses 3 life, searches their library for a card, puts it into their hand, then shuffles their library. Basically, you get Marilyn down, and then you get Opposition Agent down, and then fun times are had just by you. No one can draw cards, but each turn you're going to be tutoring up a card for yourself from an opponent's library, and they lose 3 life. So yeah, unless they've already got something in their hand to stop you, that's going to be game over. Regardless, that is the final combo for today, and this show is wrapping up. So, like I mentioned before, in the comments below, please let me know if I missed absolutely anything. Did I miss a new commander that combos with a very specific card that I forgot to mention? Or did I make a mistake on a combo? Again, remember that with all this, if any mistakes were made, it's Eddie's fault. So if mistakes were made, make sure you let him know in the comments below. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.